or you don't need. Miško, somos first row or second, choose.
Okay, sorry.
You too.
Thank you. Just I would like first to start with a little warm-up, to warm up our brain and our mind and our face. So, I would start just to activate muscles, activate all the points of face and head. Just observe or experience with fingers, face, skull. Close your eyes and put your fingers. Just free the tension. The tension after first two sessions is somewhere blocked your brain. Find the tension, free the tension in your brain. Warm up all the little muscles on the face, around eyes. Try softly to push fingers behind eyes or between skull and eyes. Experience with the touching your nose, bones, the roof of your nose. All the minor muscles. Experience it differently than you usually do when you are tired, when you have a tired face and you didn't sleep that long or you couldn't sleep at the hot night, early summer night in Prague. Then come to your ears and touch and push and pull your ears in all different directions. Try how your ears are flexible. Breathe, deeper breath. Send your breath in the point, in the place where you touch your ears, where you touch your skull. Then come with fingers to the back of your head, where the spine enters the skull. Move your skin on your head in different directions. As if you would like to take your skin off your skull. Then come back to the mouth. And before we start to talk, just activate your mouth. Push and pull it in all directions. Play with it. Just observe yourself from inside. sit actively. And breathe deep. Thank you. At least head is ready. We'll see if even after session we will, or during the session we will activate all the body. So let me introduce from the very beginning Herr Belpam. Yeah? Belpam. Thank you. From the KASK School of Arts in Gent, Belgium. And I would like to introduce him as he's acting and directing is his own theater project called Leon Theater Company, and he's teaching at in the drama program of KASK, and actually, I hope so, that actually you are working on this project initiated by KASK with called Towards a New Materialism. Yeah? Towards a New Materialism. I don't know if you will talk even about it, but it examines how a language and meaning emerge out of playing with abstract form. So, it's your turn now.
Okay. I will try to explain a little bit about my educational practice, about its framework, its motives, its challenges. I will do so by reading from my screen, but I will once in a while look at you to see if you understand it. Also, if I would kind of start speaking lower, you don't understand me anymore, just shout so that I can reintegrate myself.
The acoustic here is quite problematic, that's why the sessions moved 1 year upstairs, so please speak louder.
I will try to do so. Is it okay for now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Alright. One of the weaknesses of our society is that our concept of language is in general very narrow. We tend to limit language to spoken language. We conceive it as a tool we use to communicate. I would like to approach language from a much broader perspective. Let us assume, for a moment, that newborn babies have no concept of language. We can imagine that such a child makes no distinction between moving her or his legs and producing sound with the mouth. After a while, the child will learn to separate these experiences. She will learn that orally producing sound has another value than moving the arms or legs. And yet, how is stretching the arms towards someone different from exclaiming, "Pick me up"? What belongs to language and what not? Whatever the philosophical answer to that question may be, our baby will soon learn that one is language, the other is not. She will also learn which sounds belong to language and which not. Crying is not talking, even if it might be more effective in getting what you need. We could imagine a very different society in which one communicates, for instance, by walking in patterns, like bees do. According to the pattern you make on the floor, the way in which you walk, and movements or even sounds that accompany this walking, the statement changes. Our baby would soon attach a totally different value to her leg movements. Maybe we would all the time turn babies on their bellies so they would learn to walk sooner. Maybe after a while, babies would learn to walk earlier than they do now. We generally assume, without really knowing we assume this, that the language we speak is one of the highest possible forms of language and that it is in some ways perfect or even meant to be. This is a big misconception. The language we speak has taken its form by accident. It is random. It is complex, but we can easily imagine a language that is even more complex than ours. We can imagine languages that use objects to communicate. We can imagine a language that is sung, like birds sing. A language that is built, as if we would communicate with architecture. We could imagine a language in which content is not fixed. A language that does not try to name things. Or a language in which everything is described as an action. A table would not exist, eating would. A language that does not cling to truth, as our language tends to do. A language that only starts meaning something when it is seen or heard. Actually, human languages do all this. We just do not generally acknowledge it. This is what Ludwig Wittgenstein tries to unravel in his philosophical investigations. Language, according to Wittgenstein, is not a logical system. It is an endless series of language games, whose rules are fluid and established in the game itself. Language is an action. The content of an utterance is not fixed, but emerges in the action. Thus, the utterance water could mean I'm thirsty, or the roof is leaking, or this food is very hot. The meaning of the word is not in the word, but in the utterance. And what about the language game taking a walk? What do you communicate when you walk hastily through a big city in a suit with a Starbucks coffee in your hand? Or when you walk through the center of Prague in shorts? Is this not a language? Because you are not, or maybe this is not a language because you are not in the act of expressing yourself. But in a way you are, and we do read it. For Michel Foucault, language is not the expression of an individual, it is a collection of discursive formations. Language exists before you. You can take in a certain subject position in language when it is appropriate, when you get the authority. You are fired, for instance, is a language act you could claim, but only if you are head of a company. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything. Language, in a way, chooses you. The expressions you are authorized to use form the individual, not the other way around. Theater is the arena of language in its broad definition. An arena because it is defined by the glance, a spectator looking from a certain angle, thus framing and charging the space. The stage, the empty space that is created by the look, could be seen as a symbolic point zero, a white canvas. We all agree this represents a nothing, a 0 point of meaning. Although the codes with which we will construct meaning when the performance starts is already somehow fixed. When a person walks across a stage from left to right and back, I will perceive it differently when I'm expecting a dance piece, performative work, or repertoire theatre, although the action might be exactly the same. I teach a training module in the first bachelor of the drama department of Castres School of Arts in Ghent, Belgium. And I work with abstract physical improvisations to examine a certain essence of being on stage. Before you have a text or a character, a concept, a scenography, there is just this bare situation with all its possibilities. There is a space, time, a person, a body, to look. In one of my central exercises, I ask one player to enter the stage and to propose to the audience an abstract movement as a starting point for play or communication. I ask her or him to keep on searching how she can develop this movement in an abstract way. After a while, a second person can enter and start playing with the first. There is an interesting moment in these exercises when suddenly what is happening starts meaning something. While at first you see people searching, trying to find each other, mimicking each other, reacting to each other, Suddenly, something is established and accepted. A rule, maybe, a certain form of the body, a rhythm, a spatial pattern, or just the acceptance of being together, close together or far away. A new language has at that time been created. A language that will soon be forgotten, but for now, we understand each other in it. In a later stage of the training, we build up these exercises to entail a lot more players during a longer time. The goal of my training with performers is to start examining this essential process of signification. How does meaning, content, imagination emerge out of a plane with abstract form? I teach my students to become clear in their propositions, to use time, to use space, time, positioning towards each other as a way to communicate, to create content, relation, society. I encourage them to play impulsively, not to make plans, but to interact in the moment. Otherwise, there is no real language here. At the same time, I try to broaden their impulsive, physical and emotional imagination. And I encourage them to be unclear as well, to be ambiguous. As a performer, you communicate a lot more than what you propose or what you consciously propose. My training starts from the idea that a performer speaks as soon as she or he enters the stage. Every way of moving on stage or in our everyday life is coded and communicates. As a performer, you do not only play with the abstract form and the possibilities of your body, you also play with the codes that are attributed to the theatrical context, to movement and to the body. Learning to recognize and to work with the subtle differences in how one communicates oneself is the essence of my pedagogical method. It is almost finished.
Yeah.
It is about designing your present. As a kind of working tool, I try to define different qualities of presence. Your presence, for instance, has a visual quality. Your body is always an image in a space. A movement quality. Even if you are just walking, you are doing it fast, slow, lazy, curvy, etc. It has an architectural quality. You are changing the makeup of the space. A temporal quality. In theater you can stop, slow down or speed up time. A rhythmical quality, a melodic quality, a performative quality. You are always a person with a complex inner world of experience. A relational quality, a narrative quality, even if you're not making a story. All these elements together serve to create a complex presence that tells a complex story. All these qualities are elements of the language game. You can design every one of them very subtly or very explicitly. In my opinion, when one of these qualities is not worked with, you get a poor performance. And then, as a conclusion, in this training, I do not teach my students what is good and what is bad. Everything can work or tell something if you want that. Training is a joint examination of the situation we are in, called language. Looking at and reflecting is as important as trying things on the floor. Also, playing, moving, interacting is as important a form of thinking and reflecting as the reflections we do with words. My aim is not in the first place to create good actors, although I do want to do that, but to invite people into a way of looking at the world and of interacting with that world that I think is valuable, not only to position yourself as an artist, but also as a citizen in a society. Voilà.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Howard Lotker and shortly introduce Howard. He's founder of Prague Prize award-winning experimental site-specific theater company called OM. Yeah, thank you. Teacher of dialogical acting, authorial acting, devising scientifics, and many different subjects.
Dramaturgy.
Yeah, here in Prague, and you studied theater and political science in
Yes, in Santa Barbara, California.
yeah, okay, and authorial acting, Ivan Skočil, authorial acting.
Exactly, the chair program
Yeah.
here, before there was.
Howard, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Hi, okay, so, I apologize first, I'm also going to look at the paper and kind of speed read and look up at you from time to time if I am. So I apologize, I wanted to, this is my first time presenting this in this short of a format, so I'm used to kind of this more loose, over the course of a semester or two, presenting this and myself and this expanded viewpoints framework. You're going to see photographs from rehearsals, from workshops, from performances where we've used viewpoints and expanded viewpoints. So that's what the slideshow is going on. Yeah, you start from number 1. Yes, thank you. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I grew up in the U.S., as you can maybe tell from my accent, in the suburbs of everywhere. Suburbs of Washington, D.C., suburbs of New York, suburbs of Honolulu, and suburbs of Los Angeles. I joke about myself as a cultural refugee from the United States, but that's like literally actually true. The kinds of projects and ideas and things that I have about combining life and art and I'm interested in the US are usually referred to as weird and strange projects. But in Europe, people think of them as art. So that was a big revelation for delight for me, actually. So I've been in Prague now for 18 years. I originally studied at University of California, Santa Barbara, at a wonderful school that combined this kind of American realism, theater training with amazing movement and voice training, where we were learning about the kind of basic principles of theater through application, through experimentation, through trial and error, through devising, through site-specific work. So, but there was so little opportunity to expand that outside of school that that I was frustrated, and so that was the mid 1990s, and capitalism was on the wax post-Cold War. So this is why coming to Europe and eventually decided to stay in Europe made so much sense for me. Of course, falling in love with Sonia Lotger also helped a lot, and so I've been here more or less permanently since 2000. And it was also thanks to Sonia that I found out about this fascinating discipline, the dialogical acting with the inner partner, which is this way. It's an original Czech discipline, still taught by its founder, Adam Ivan Vyskočil, a way of kind of finding yourself, discovering your own body, voice, your through public dialogue with yourself, with improvisation. Vyskočil is a renowned writer, actor, director, philosopher, psychologist, teacher, so he has it coming from lots of different angles. And the department's focused on the human being first, and then as a creative individual, and then working as an artist was something that was really fascinating for me, and still is still inspiring for me. And I teach there as well at Kata and Kalb, and the program. That's okay. Moving on. So part of my practice has always involved teaching, because I have a very strong rational side, and I enjoy how teaching helps me to step back and name things and communicate them, and keeps me focused on the fundamental in the field, or at least I think it does, which makes me more grounded. So during my studies, and since then, I've made Damu, Qatar, Kalb, talked about that stuff. Great, we're moving on. So I'm also aware of this enormous development in the 20th century, 19th century as well, the 21st, in theater pedagogy. That was sometimes following and sometimes going ahead of theater practice itself. And that's also one of these things that's always fascinating to me, is how these different elements kind of intertwine with each other. And there's this lovely quote that misattributed to Einstein, that one definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So it's always interesting for me to find ways to how we can think about new processes that can help us to discover new ways into performance, or maybe make up new processes for the kinds of performance that the contemporary performances will make, which is kind of why I ended up discovering and kind of changing, expanding the viewpoints. So I first encountered viewpoints in depth. It was a 2-week workshop in Prague with Anne Bogart and the City Company in the summer of 2007. I was excited to go deep into the discipline, intense many hours a day. For those of you who don't know viewpoints, I think it's not only a wonderful path of devising through improvisation, it's also the most deep and complex way of naming the elements of time and space as they exist in performance and everyday life. And so it's a way, it breaks them down, time and space, into more manageable bits, so you can see more clearly, and it provides a framework to analyze and use these fundamental aspects of our existence, time and space, more fully during creation. So time can be broken down into elements like tempo, duration, repetition. Space can be broken down into elements like architecture, spatial relationships, shape, and gesture. And each of these ways of breaking up Anne Bogart calls a viewpoint. So the viewpoints also teaches the value of collaboration, the value of feedback. I think that's another amazing contribution on Anne Bogart's behalf to kind of theater pedagogy, or my pedagogy. And she insists on the importance of real dialogue between the students, or between the group, and between the participants and the observers. And in fact, the participants always give feedback first about what was difficult, interesting, fun, magical for them, and then the rest of the group, and usually pedagogue last. So they get practice discovering their own voice, discovering what they think is interesting, because they're going to have to create things themselves. We're not going to do that for them. So I think it's a really wonderful way to work, kind of interactively, non-hierarchically, and then only kind of stepping in if there's a problem. Yeah, because they should be discovering what they want to create. So viewpoints have shown themselves to be a really useful way of analyzing and playing the basic elements of theater, but a wonderful teaching tool. But even during the initial workshops, often during longer improvisations, what's happening on stage would feel quite closed off from the audience and prone to get stuck dramaturgically. At the same time, the improvisers themselves would somehow begin to get stiff. You could feel them kind of subconsciously kind of closing up. That bothered me, and I tried to find ways around that kind of in my pedagogy exercises before and after, but nothing was really successful, or nothing worked out well for a long time. So after some time, I realized that the viewpoints were actually set up in that way, in a way on purpose, because Anne Bogart is using them to generate material for her company performances and to train performers, not to make kind of free improvisations that have a chance to work as a whole. And she would coach during the improvisation. She would say, "Keep going. Don't find an end. Stay in the middle. That's fine. Be happy with that. Get into the middle. Go deeper with it." So her actors, weren't worried about what was working in the moment. They were only afterward they would start to kind of reflect. So I'm really interested in kind of helping performing artists and myself, I guess, first of all, to kind of to find myself, to free myself, to find some kind of feeling of ease. That's one of my basic needs as a creator again and again. And that's what kind of led me away from what Bogart is suggesting and finding some adjustments and at the same time, I've also been extremely frustrated by the fact that in theater, there are no frameworks for creating full-length, fully improvised performances in physical, visual, or drama theater, the way that contact improvisation and toe exist. The dance world, I've trained in both of those for a while, so I have lots of practice as well. So when I saw the potential to develop and Bulgar's viewpoints also as a model for this kind of open, free, long improvisation, I thought that would be worth the effort. So I spent like 5 years kind of reading and teaching and trial and error. And after much frustration, I was able to deal with the main issues that were bothering me in the viewpoints improvisations and create a kind of a framework for pure improvisation at the same time, actually. So so the process was one of identifying problems within the viewpoints themselves, such as the performers not knowing what to do with their eyes, and the performers feeling obligated to do something all the time, and the tendency for improvisations to get stuck dramaturgically after 10 minutes or so. So in response to problems such as these, I created additional viewpoints as new areas for the performers to focus on, like gaze, stillness and silence, and timing. By working on these elements as part of the viewpoint structure themselves, I was able to give the participants more freedom to play fully, because they would have fewer bad habits holding them back, and I wouldn't have to nag them about these kind of elements or bad habits in feedback after the improvisations. They could kind of incorporate them quite naturally because they felt them to be part of the structure. So the viewpoints work can take about 2 years for most students to find freedom and ease in the work. With these additional viewpoints, it usually takes between 1 semester and 1 school year. So, and I've added 7 additional viewpoints to the structure, like musicality and time, and there was one suggested by student Nadezhda Nazarova this year, presence. That's the first one that we've had by a participant in the class. And also in space that we have effort and performance audience relationship. So now we're ready for this pure improvisational structure to kind of be tested in performance, and that's the next step. So we're applying for grants, and whether I get one or not, then we'll test them. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would, yeah, come. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just, I think I prepared some questions, but I'm sorry for the third one, Pierre Nadeau. It couldn't, for me, unknown reasons come. Couldn't be here. He's sick, or one information is that he said he was sick. Yeah, so he has it. Hopefully this is nothing very bad. What I, as a teacher on our department of alternative and puppet theater, what I'm facing every year are on one side exams on the very beginning, and students that come mostly from middle schools or sometimes from bachelor studies or economy in different directions. The first enthusiasm on the very beginning and flexibility during these 3 rounds, energy, dynamics, etc. And then in the first year, kind of confusion and frustration, how it develops, because it is called acting of something. And we are all of a sudden pushing them more in the direction devising, performing, or they haven't been ready or used to. They had some iconic image of acting or studying acting, Prague School, and it is more and more shifted in a way of in an abstract way, to the abstract form, less and less real shaped, so to say it. And the question is how, what are your experiences with the expectations of students coming to your school, for example, and how it develops, how they come, let's say, open-minded to the school and are open-minded enough to accept it, to go with it, not to struggle long time that it makes them blocked more than opened.
I think in that respect we have a slightly different situation in Ghent or maybe in Belgium. I don't know. I can really tell. But we have in our school we have the drama department. So there's just one department. It's not separated between acting or making or performing. It's just one big drama department, and we are also very explicit about it that we want everyone to start in this first 2 years that are training years. Everybody starts with playing, investigating things on the floor, reflecting there. There's also a lot of theory, all these things. And generally in the part of this educational program, students start choosing their own direction. So they start going more into playing, going more into like more traditional text-based theater or performing, or more into dance, although we're not a dance program, to be clear. But there's a lot of different outcomes and a lot of different forms, and we try to, I wanted to say establish, but that's not a good word, but to have them all. And we're very explicit when people come to do audition that we are not an actor training program, that we want to train performing artists with the important word is artist. You're, even as an actor, you are a creator in a way. And I think in Belgium maybe we have an interesting situation in that respect that, I don't know, not only do we have a very vibrant international performing arts field where there's a lot happening in very different directions, but also we have, like in Ghent, in Antwerp, and in Brussels, very interesting schools with very different profiles. So if we get somebody in the auditions that we always have a long conversation with the people coming in. When we notice that the expectations are really far away from what we actually do as a program, we try to, we do not take them. And we tell them to maybe try in a different school, not because we, as the most important thing at the auditions, we do not answer the question, do you have talent, or can you do this, can you act? The only question we answer is, do we think you will be happy in our program? Do we think we can help you, that you will flourish in this program? And sometimes it's already very clear from the beginning that the expectations are something really different, and we do not want to change people's expectations or change their motivation or all these things. If you have to do that, that's very difficult.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the same. The very last day, more or less individual dialogues with the students. But they compare it in other schools in Czech Republic, and they are convinced. That this is the right place, not the drama department or something. But finally, they struggle. The first year or first 2 years, they struggle. Being convinced before they come to the school, and knowing from different people, different students that study here, we convince that is the right program. What are your experiences?
Yeah. Well, in the authorial acting program, I think that's also very common, both in the Czech program and in the international program. That even though we try to we try to be upfront about what we're teaching, there's always a time in each. But during the first 2 semesters, and it happens for almost every student, where they get into some kind of conflict with themselves or with the teacher or with this way of looking at theater or art or human beings. But I think that's also that really belongs in the kind of dialogue with the teacher and the students. But because I think that people who are creating art are usually motivated in kind of hardcore, interesting, in different ways, and differently than other people. So I think that it's not unusual to expect their behaviors and questions and demands also somehow to be different. And so to really to find a way to engage with the frustration is that's I kind of like that, because I go through cycles of frustration and hopelessness and joy and discovery. So yeah, I can
Okay, thank you. The second question was what I wanted to ask is in connection with these expectations, mostly international students 1 or 2 years ago came with vision that they will get a toolbox how to make a theater. They can come to Prague for 2 years and come out of Prague with a toolbox. Coming after studying architecture, MA study in Prague, and then ready to make a theater. You mentioned this Anne Bogart viewpoints. What I see kind of toolbox. It is toolbox, how to make a performance, how to work with the actors. On the other side, you mentioned that finding freedom in structure. And then I see a little bit contradiction between looking for or finding freedom in structure and having Anne Bogart's viewpoints, and isn't there kind of tension between these ways?
Yes, but I think hopefully it's a productive tension. I think that's also why we have the title of the seminar as it is. We're looking for this order and chaos to be in dialogue with each other, what we can control and what we can't control. So, and one of the reasons I think Anne Bogart's the framework works is because it's also naming of the reality of time and space. So it's something that you can really simply kind of play with in rehearsals and workshops and discover things about yourself or about the situation, about the problem that you're working on. So yeah, that's a little topic. But I think I think that we also shouldn't be afraid of these contradictions of chaos and order, of hope and hopelessness, because I think that's also what we're living in. That's the world that we're living in right now. It's full of all of these contradictions, also between rich and poor, between the powerful people with voices and people without voices. So I think that being aware, naming the contradictions, and thematizing the contradictions for those of the people who are interested in working with that, then that's great. But if they have other themes, of course, that's up to the students as well.
But leave the students your school with what we could call toolbox. Yeah, at least for actors or performance training, that they to practice it constantly, to be in a form, really before.
We will never define it as a toolbox. That is very clear. Because in all the training we do, we never try to form somebody into something else, like design somebody into a good actor, and because that would mean that we know what that means, and that would mean that it would have the danger that we kind of impose a style, a way of acting that we perceive as good.
Sorry, I didn't mean the acting, just the training, how to give the body voice, etc.
The thing is, I kind of really believe that people can play. All people actually can do that. All people do that the whole time. You play constantly. So the work we try to do in this training is not to teach somebody how to play, but to kind of sharpen it and to show somebody what he is doing, what he is not, because there's a lot of kind of ineffectiveness, for instance, when people start playing. A lot of things they do, they're not conscious of, so you try to make them conscious of what they are doing, and not maybe telling, well, don't do that because it's not good, just be clear in that. But maybe, yeah, well, maybe this unclearness, what you're doing, maybe you can make something out of it. Maybe it's actually your way of acting or what you want to investigate. But you have to be conscious of what you're doing, in a way. You have to be able to play with all these aspects of being on stage. But I would never call it a toolbox because it would mean, and actually I see a lot of performers and actors performing with a toolbox, and it's very boring because the only thing you see is the tools. And I want to see a person. I want to see someone with a specific imagination, with someone who really, for whom it is important when he's on stage, he or she that is on stage, and that you know why you're there, that it means something, that you try to relate or find a position towards the material that you're doing. And that for me is an artist's practice. And for me also has nothing to do with the toolbox. Although, of course, you can be very, it has to do with techniques, but a lot of these techniques we kind of intuitively carry with us. We learn them from when we're very little. And most of all, when in auditions, for instance, we choose people, a lot of the times we don't always choose the people that are technically the best actors at that time, because you can see somebody who's already technically very, very good, but in a way you miss some kind of spark or some kind of an imagination. You think like, wow, I would love to watch this guy or this girl for 60 years and see what he's still doing. And sometimes we choose a lot of the times people that are really bad at that time when they come to the audition, are really stumbling and nervous and not speaking well and can't hardly move. But you can work on that. You can make somebody conscious of how he's doing that. I would say I'm not sure of that, but you can't work on somebody's imagination. You can spark it. I don't know. But there has to be something there.
Thank you. Yes.
Did one of you try it out in the public space, inviting people to play, or well, with Howard I know you did, but in your own practice, like inviting people to play or to look at the viewpoints as a performer yourself, or because if you do this with your students, you invite them to find the play and another way of language. But do you have you also done this as a performer in the public space or in your own?
I always work in a few sessions in the public space with my students. But of course, it's most of the time we work in the public space. It's a completely different frame from the studio, so it changes the exercise, it changes what is happening. But most of the time, people hanging around don't really know what is happening, are not aware of it. There's no sign. No
show.
Yeah, it's the same.
I don't know if that answers.
But not. Did you already do it in a performative way? Like, I mean, the way that you were approaching your students, did you try working with that with your audience, like one-on-one, or maybe in the with the distance of the stage and the audience? But
I don't know exactly that I understand your question.
Can we
talking about like making a workshop for the audience?
yes, or even a performance where you invite the audience to participate and doing that by using this language or by deconstructing the language.
I mean, I have done that in this version of Oedipus that we did, where we kind of taken the performance apart from all these different pretending to do this great classical theater, which was really badly done and super close to the audience. And at the end of that production, we had this moment in the play where everything was going to go really badly. And so we stopped it and pretended it was a workshop for the audience who were there for their self-help, and they got to do this kind of Boal theater of the oppressed exercises with the actors who were sometimes performing with them, and sometimes they were performing to see if we could find a way to end the tragedy that was about to happen. Oedipus, but of course, yeah, we could. Yeah, so yeah, in that way.
So then it's more in a workshop kind of way that
We
you can
set
do
up
this.
kind of
Yeah.
It was a performance.
It is, but yeah.
But we made it feel like a
Yeah.
workshop.
Yeah.
Please.
Question for Roberto. About the project towards a new materialism. I'd like to know, I know the project on the end of theory and critical thought, and also the conceptual feminist thought is my field. But I am very interested to know which kind of relationship you create between the corporeal practices and the thinking, the thought, I suppose, on the body, and which kind of connection between the critical work and the work on the certain work. I don't know in which way you work it, but maybe it could be interesting for the connection between theory and practices.
Yes. For me, it's a very important thing, because I as you noticed, a lot of what I'm doing in my work, although it started really as a very intuitive work when I started teaching, I didn't know what I was doing. I just started like developing these kind of exercises, and I started seeing in these exercises things that happened that interested me, and then I started reading a lot about philosophy, language philosophy, and for me this critical line of thought really helped me to sharpen these exercises and to sharpen what I'm doing. So I want to share that with my students, and I do. We read a lot of texts, we talk
Together?
Yes, together. We talk a lot about this framework, and for me these exercises, although the basis is always like, okay, we go on stage, we try things, we look at it, we try to tell what we have seen. And I try to help them sometimes to be sharper in what they have seen, because at first you just see, it's really nice. So to really become more specific in like talking about that. And these texts can help a lot about in doing that, and reflecting on the work. And in reflecting on it not only within a kind of theater space, but within society in a whole, and within politics, and within how you position yourself. Because for me, this question about language is that bigger question. And on the other hand, I don't know exactly how it works or if it always works, but for me, I hope, because I invite my students to not, in a way, to work impulsively, to not plan what they are going to do, not to go on stage with that, and then I'm going to do something like that. Yeah, just go on stage and then go from there. Don't think about it. But for me, that's a kind of popular misconception in this kind of work, that people say I have to stop thinking and then I can act. And for me, that doesn't work, because you never stop thinking. And actually, if you start thinking, and if you can let that happen, if you can think and feel, I mean, we can do that. We do it all the time. We talk, we think, we feel, we think about something useless, something very important. We are hugely complex beings in that respect. But in some way, what happens a lot when we go on stage is that we kind of reduce ourselves to this very stupid shell that cannot think and feel at the same time. And that's something I really try to encourage my students to start doing, to live on stage, not to, when we enter the stage, to be like, no, but to keep on living and thinking and this kind of complex thought material, to take it with you, to let it also be, I don't know, something that can trigger you on stage. I do hope it sometimes happens.
Could you you read texts with the necklaces, like you read Wittgenstein and Foucault, or what kind
Nietzsche, Wittgenstein, Foucault, and then it changes.
But not only with actors. You with all the group.
With the whole group, it's
Then divides in.
yeah, it's like a group in the
Yeah.
first year, mostly a group of like 15 people.
like with the students?
Yeah. And it's sometimes, I mean, for a big part, these are students like 18, 19 years old. Some are older. So for some of
How
them,
many years is the bachelor's?
the bachelor is 3 years and the master is officially 1 year. Most people do it in 2 or 3 years. Like, for a lot of them, it's very difficult to start reading this text. But that's not really a problem. They understand some things and they start understanding that they can understand things in different ways. And it's a process. And I have never had really bad experiences with people not understanding or really being. I think for myself also in my own parcours until now, a lot of the time I've been reading things that I didn't understand at all. And I kind of learned to keep on reading and to read it again and again, and suddenly you start understanding things.
But I think that some books or like French philosophers are written in this way that it's not for only fully understanding, but it also triggers your imagination, and it's not that you don't understand, but they help you to go somewhere else, not just stay in the words.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's already something some people really have to learn or accept, or have never been introduced to this kind of idea that you can understand something without understanding it, that some things are not written or meant to in that kind of very strict logical way to understand.
Do you work with your students only with the native language, or for example, even you read some English text and work with them?
We've been reading it mostly in the native tongue,
Which is?
Dutch. Although you could read in English, I think most of the people.
Yeah, but if you are
Some people would have.
you mention the language as you come to the language, so the question is if you come, for example, to other languages or to gibberish or to some abstract language, if you
It's funny, in my work up until now, I have never worked with spoken language in the improvisations. I am now going to change that for the first time. And I'm going to work with poetry, with German poetry from Paul Celan. Very, very, very difficult, strange poetry. So,
but in Dutch translation.
oh, yes, German, and I think it's probably it will be very interesting also for them to do that in German and not to really understand it. Or to have learned the poem to understand it, but not to speak it. I mean, it's again investigating what is happening when you're. I mean, talking is a very physical action.
So what role plays in your school voice training, classical voice training? We have pedagogues that are working in the very, say, traditional, making very traditional voice training based by working with Shakespeare text, antique or ancient Greek drama, etc. So this classical, of course, translations in the Czech language. How is when you don't use the language at all?
Well, there's really what in voice training we We have been in the past having somebody who worked with Linklater technique in the university, but now we changed we have somebody who does Alexander, which is also like a broader investigation of how you position your body, how you move, like a very soft learning technique. And then, like the training I teach is 15 sessions in the course of 2 or 3 months. In the meanwhile, they sometimes work with other people also. And for instance, there's one of our teachers who works with repertoire in the second year, for instance, with Shakespeare, Shakespeare, and who really works from a very physical angle. It's a bit more in the tradition of Grotowski, kind of physical, emotional processes, starting from really violent, from hard physical exercise and shouting and really opening up the voice and this, and then to come to a kind of understanding of what you're saying at the moment without rationally understanding it, speaking in the moment. So this is, for instance, a kind of training that really also has as one of its aspects really this what it means to be speaking, to use your voice, and also what is the content of how you speak. It's not only what you say, but how you speak that gives, it creates content.
Gert, and is that part of your bachelor or your master?
That's part of the bachelor.
And then in the master, what are the...
Actually, there's in the first 2 years we have this training program, so we kind of, as a school, decide what they are going to do. And then from the third year, so already in the bachelor, we work with projects.
Yeah.
And we invite directors, makers, performers from outside of the school to guide one of these projects. And they can choose out of 8 projects, they have to choose 2. So they kind of already choose a direction into more like text-based theater or performative work or dance or whatever they want to do. And in the master is it's like this evolution towards really devising your own practice. In the master, almost everything they have to decide themselves, what they do, how they organize it. And the focus is really on their own master work, which can be something they make themselves or make collaboratively, or as a player maybe they play in performance. But it's a real, it has to be a real investigation into what it means for you to be a performer or player.
And in the master's program, are the most of the students continuing from the bachelor's, or is it a very mixed?
You mean that literally that most students?
No, so I'm asking, literally, or is it a mix of students from outside and from inside the academy, or?
More and more it's a mix. It wasn't like that before, but we try to really, in a way, it's 2 different educational programs, the bachelor and the master, and we try to now really open that up. It's actually most of them a different crew of teachers. There's mostly also teachers coming from outside to be mentoring processes and stuff like that. So, and as a result, and also that's why we want to have more people from other programs in Belgium. But we also have now, since I think next year, we'll have an English master program. So that's the idea to really this master, that it is more separate from the bachelor training.
So how many from these 15 bachelor students continue their MS study?
It's difficult to say, because from the 3rd bachelor on, people kind of really start to have their own time frame, and some do this 3rd year already like in 2 years, because they're also working or doing other stuff already professionally. But in general, we have this vision that when we choose somebody in the audition, we want to get them to the end. But sometimes we kind of start noticing also that there's a limit to what somebody is doing, or that, for instance, because in the master program, they really have to have their own artistic practice. They really have to do it themselves. It really has to be sharp. They are also, the judges. The jury is also from outside the school, so sometimes you really sense with people that that they're not ready to do the master yet. And the idea with this more separate master is also that people would sometimes just wait and go working and do work professionally, and then afterwards when they are ready to do the masters. But it's a difficult thing because officially the bachelor program has no, it's called a civil effect. Yeah,
Oh my God.
so you don't really, it's incredible to see.
So 3 years of study with certificate. Right?
Yeah, so if you have to do the master,
And then you get the masters.
yeah. But it's counterintuitive to what we want to do, and also actually what from higher up they want us to do, because they want these bachelor and master programs to be more separate. So yes, it's not.
Any other question?
Just here in W you have the same structure, master and bachelor. No, it's
Bachelor 3 years and now
Okay.
master 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And PhD as well.
Can I ask, you work in your classes with drama text, with classical drama text, or not at all? Or with some fragments of written play?
In my classes, I don't work with drama text, with nothing, no spoken word at all. I will do it from this year on. I will experiment with it, but not with drama texts yet. We'll see.
Because I would totally agree with everything you were saying at the beginning about how you make the auditions, and I would like to hope that we are actually doing it in the very same way. And why I'm asking is that, like the first year, it's quite clear to me that it's based on games, on what does it mean to be on stage in a very general sense, like accepting all uniqueness of each student, but then I think like the part of acting is of course one side, or one part of it is also this mimetic side, to create a character out of your body and out of your mind, to create someone else, to represent someone. That's a big question nowadays for me actually. What's the right way to this drama text as a beginning of being on stage? Because there is this quite interesting theory of one quite old professor from here, from this academy, based on the fact that the reality around is like staged to so high level that it's actually a big question: how can we watch on another reality on stage, because we are hosting different levels of fictions and realities, and how to create this, because what was Brian talking about at the very beginning, I think he wanted to point out that the people who were accepted to our school as actors or students of acting, of course, have, even with all these viewpoints and everything, and all these device methods and everything in the back, that acting is also this. And what I'm searching for in the last 5-6 years is actually what is the right way to start in devising, to start with understanding theater as a tool for communication and not as a dance tool, voice tool, whatever, but how to get there.
I think for me, for instance, in the improvisations we do, I call them language games, but and they are playful. But we also work towards this combination of playfulness and seriousness. For me, it's very important that it's not just playing around, and it's not only about this is a movement class and we're working with the body. It's without having said a word, you position yourself towards each other, and without working from a text or a concept or something that you have before, when things start happening on the stage, it can go quite far. Also in the relationships you create and the world, what is starting to grow in this space. And for me, it already has, and that's what I really work towards in the end of these 15 sessions, that already it is an exercise in dramatic art. It's not for me a dance exercise, although I hope you do learn to use your body in a very nice, imaginative way. But it's about creating this, how do you create a physical, emotional imagination from playing. And actually that's why I want to use text now, because for me at that point, text can also emerge, and it's not something different. It's not, in a way for me, like the idea of a mimet theory of theater being mimetic is a problematic one, because I don't believe we try to represent a world outside, or want to show how things are done in the outside world. And I do not think that playing also is less real than what happens in one of these indeed many different realities we are experiencing now. In a way, it's one of, it's like a little theory I have, and I have no fundament for it, but I do think it's an interest, or it's an important theory in what I do. That I mean, we start playing when we're a little child. That's how we learn everything, by mimicking, by playing, and after a while, this game becomes very serious. After a while, you just start. You don't know that you're playing anymore, but you have learned everything by playing, so you're still playing. When you're talking, when we're in parliament, when you're having a fight with your partner, you are playing a very, very, very serious game. And I do not think that if you're on a stage and you're saying to somebody, I don't love you anymore, that you are mimicking what is happening in the outside world. In a way, because on stage you can acknowledge the fact that you are playing, what you can't do in the real world, or the world would collapse. In a way, this situation, speaking on a stage, is more real and is more honest than the interaction we have outside.
But I think that the world wouldn't necessarily collapse. But I think that's also one of the things that, one of the reasons I like the site-specific performance and interventionist art and going into the streets, because we can see that when we start to play in the world and to bring this, the mirror or to this mimetic force, or our images out into the world doesn't collapse, and there's a lot of real transfer of information and knowledge, and yeah, I love that. And I want to say one more thing about the mimetic, if I can. That I think it's all one of the things that Shakespeare is talking about in the advice. He talks about this theater as holding a mirror up to nature, but I think that that's also a little bit misinterpreted. But I think it's also about holding the mirror up to human nature, more than just like being this good copy of nature. So I think it's also about like holding the mirror up to our souls and showing us the things that we do want to see and don't want to see, our potentials, our horrors, and all those things. So I think that, yeah. So I think that's also a different level of the mimesis of this kind of reproduction. It doesn't have to be so realistic. And I think, Jirka, if I can say about the students in the first year, I think it's or first semester, I think it's great to have them more focused, exactly how you're saying, on this discovery of themselves. And I've been teaching acting at Prague Film School, and there's a lot of this kind of, I've been teaching them how to become different characters on film, and we've been doing a lot through improvisations, like Stanislavski-based improvisations, because they're used to kind of being themselves. They learn how to be themselves a little bit in my classes, not people's classes. And then we start, okay, so how can you find a character or find a situation that's really, really different from you? And make that also part of the task, maybe at the end of the first year, beginning of the second year. Because, yeah, I mean, because I think there also is something too, because some people are going to be talented, that some people are not. And so, but I think it's nice to also offer to everyone this potential to look at who am I as me, and how can I also represent others, and to what degree, successfully or actively, comically, or that's also it's up it takes time.
Well, I know, of course, like the theater reality on stage is somehow more real than the reality outside, and it has to be born every time, again and again, and it has to be live there. But well, I was asking for the way, how to get it for students, because what I see, and I have tried like in more different ways, is that as soon as till you are very uncertain about what the acting actually means to you, then you are still, very sensitive to anything that is coming to you during classes and not very open. But you are still searching for something that will give you some kind of security on stage. And it goes through this standing alone on the stage, being very ashamed, blah, 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 everything. But was the right moment to give you the text, that was written in 16th century, to make it really vivid, alive on stage? Because there is this big, everyone wants to be very authentic, very, very real on stage. And we can see everywhere, especially in TV series, like the good acting, where you almost forget about the reality around because it's so immersive in a sense. But this is not the theater reality, And I see the moment when it comes in the second semester and the third, how big difference it is when the student is really all of a sudden wants to have something that he can grasp and say, okay, now at least I know a bit that I can be an actor because I have this text and I can say it from the stage and I appear and I look quite authentic, Yeah.
It's really, could be a whole other topic, but isn't that the audience, that thing that we grab? I mean, isn't it at that moment when it's actually crucial that they can't do it alone, that they're unstable, and that instability remains in order for the need for an audience, the need for an architecture, a public relationship with the world is there, and that instability is like you're talking about, to become aware of what's happening and knowing that like this is happening. I don't know what I'm doing right now, and bringing that into what you're doing. Sharing that, like to share that and to be lost. Is that's we want to give tools to
and accepting the feeling I'm lost as a
or don't accept it
as a base.
But anyway, you need something more than yourself and your reference of the idea of the actor as your go-to, because that's a complete little Bruce. And I know there's a lot of these people who work with audience to do that. And so then there are strategies like materialism and participatory. There's thousands of ways which we all have opinions about. But I think somehow that need is like to foster like a space for that absence of an answer is the one thing that actors maybe or performers are doing that other people in the street don't have the right to do. It's like to do that job. To just be with that absence.
But what I would like to, even in connection with that, to say, you mentioned the sparkle by the students, how the profile of students that come to the schools actually changed, that you kind of prefer sparkle instead of mimetic talent or perfect mimetic talent, what qualities I see it as well. What quality? Of course, I discuss it with my colleagues that I will teach with this group of people, this group of students for next 3 years for all the bachelor studies with this voice trainer, and I share what I see, what I hear, what they see, and of course that is discussion, that is kind of fight. I know with this, I was trying to say, with this it will be easy to work, to develop. But he's boring, not that perspective. And on the other side, there are personalities with very how would I say, unclear existences, with a spark somewhere behind. But they, even after 3 years, they will not be able to say it out on the stage loud enough. I love you, or whatever to say. This is the interesting how it developed into totally other type of personalities that now theater is taking in to face the audience.
I noticed when I look at the students we have at the drama department that, I mean, some of them indeed never really get to a point where they can speak on stage in a way that is loud enough, well enough, understandable, concrete, has this kind of realness, the gap, all this, but that are great directors or great physical performers, but just like speaking, they're still afraid of it. It always also depends on kind of what they are interested in, what they feel like. So, although we have, although they do the same program in these first 2 years, they do not have to have the same profile in the end. And they do not have to have the same qualities or be equal in this kind of way. And it's sometimes difficult because you do all this training together and then you see like, oh, this guy is really good at speaking, my God, and then I'm struggling all the time, so I'm a worse actor. And it's not true, of course, you're just different. And maybe you want to be that actor that does the repertoire field, but then you have to search for your way to do that and to be able to speak, because a lot of the time it's about having this wrong conception of how you will have to do it and not speaking in your own way. But yeah, there's all kind of different profiles of people coming in, and in our program, least of all, the very traditional kind of mimetic players, or where we see that this is really the intention. We kind of tend to direct them to other schools because we know they have better programs for that than our program, or different. That is just a very different program.
Thank you, yeah, thank you, Omar.